Welcoming from De Bali in Amsterdam. Today's conversation is specifically about a joint European public sphere, a venture that is pretty much incomplete at this point, incomplete at best. We are going to talk about why, but we are also mainly going to talk about how it could come to light and what the European Cultural Foundation and its partners are doing to make it happen, make it more inclusive and fair for a general European public.
Why do we not invest properly and in the same way as we have built Airbus as a European cooperative venture and build digital infrastructure which is fair, which is inclusive, which is has the highest standard of data protection, the best standards in the world.
Okay, I'm all for pushing the European Union to actually make good on its promises, which would be lovely to see.
This Europe Challenge is a very interesting opportunity for public libraries and communities to come together through a year-long program of actions and activities in which they can learn and actually build together on solutions and activities to deal with these challenges.
Well, Europe Challenge is all about prototyping solutions, great solutions for the most pressing challenges Europe is facing, as you've seen today. So what we do in the Europe Challenge, we facilitate that by providing financial support on one hand and learning support on the other. And it comes in the shape of co-learning with your peers from across Europe in a series of online and offline events. But it's also support by democratic society who are experts in citizen engagement and innovation. And it's also an opportunity, of course, like we're doing today on the 9th of May of next year, to showcase your work and to share it with peers across Europe, and also to share it with potential new stakeholders and funders. So who can apply? All libraries across Europe are welcome to apply, as long as they are working or willing to work with their communities. And of course, we're also looking at libraries as safe havens, especially in these times, for people to get engaged in sometimes maybe even difficult conversations, or maybe to explore solutions to challenges that concern immediate dangers to them.
Jeg hedder Asmund Bertelsen, og jeg arbejder ved Aarhus Bibliotekerne på Dokk1. Afsættet for vores Europe Challenge-projekt, det var ønsket om et bibliotek for alle. Også dem, der på grund af misbrug, hjemløshed, svære sociale eller psykiske udfordringer, lever på kanten af samfundet. Det vi gjorde for at komme videre og i gang med projektet, det var at række ud til værestedet i Jægergårdsgade. Vi valgte at arbejde sammen med værestedet, fordi at Dokk1 og værestedet næsten er naboer på havnen i Aarhus. Det tager kun 10 minutter at gå fra værestedet til Dokk1.
Værestedet er indgået samarbejde med biblioteket, fordi at det er jo en gave, vi ikke kunne sige nej til, da biblioteket henvendte sig til os faktisk. Jo. Værestedet er, som navnet siger, et sted, hvor man kan få lov at være. Det vil sige, at vi ikke er et behandlingssted eller et misbrugscenter eller andet. Vi er et sted, hvor byens sociale udsatte, og det vil sige misbrugere og hjemløse og andre, kan komme og få en pause for deres hektiske Liv.
Ich bin Tim Leik und betreue im Programmbereich ganz verschiedene Veranstaltungsformate. Darunter auch mit meiner Kollegin Debbie Wallers die Europe Challenge.
Mein Name ist Debbie Wallers und ich arbeite als queere Bibliothekarin in der Zentral- und Landesbibliothek im Bereich Programm.
Bei dem Europe Challenge Projekt geht es darum, BürgerInnen Möglichkeiten zu geben, den öffentlichen Raum mitzugestalten. Ausgangspunkt war für uns, dass ein populistisches Klima und Queerfeindlichkeit keine deutschen, sondern internationale Themen sind.
Dabei war uns als Bibliothek wichtig, dass nicht wir darüber bestimmen, welche Stimmen gehört werden. Deshalb hatten wir Personen aus verschiedenen queeren Communities in der Jury sitzen, die die Auswahl getroffen haben.
But on the issue of how then the European sentiment comes about, I switch to a more materialist argument and say that in order to have a joint shared sentiment, you probably most of all need joint shared material conditions. And I think also the report and the response to the crisis show that in many ways.
Now Europe is facing the biggest refugee crisis in its history after the Second World War. And what is done already? In the March 4 temporary protection directive came in force, and not only neighboring countries such as Poland, Romania, Hungary, and Slovakia are helping Ukrainians, are letting Ukrainians in, but also we have 400,000 of Ukrainians in Germany. Here in the Netherlands, there are only 21,000 of Ukrainian refugees, and Mark Rutte was saying that Netherlands is ready to give shelter for 50,000 of them. So solidarity is enormous, and this is my first reaction on this report.
I also feel that we are living a moment where European sentiment has strengthened thanks to the crisis, or if things can happen thanks to the crisis or because of them.
Les Européens by Henri Cartier-Bresson. Only because of the name and the introductory text, from which I quote here, Cartier-Bresson traveled over a period of 5 years across Europe in order to capture what it means to be European. Beyond nationalism and the particular characteristics of each culture and nation, he found evidence of a greater identity. Beautiful. I must honestly admit that it is Cartier-Bresson's title and description that really appeal to us. As a photographer, I think Cartier-Bresson is severely overrated. Personal opinion. What was interesting for us to discover during our research is that few photographers since Cartier-Bresson have attempted to define Europe.
Europe, as we know, is a continent of thinkers, of artists, of inventors, but also of warriors and demagogues. We have a great cultural heritage and have fought the most terrible wars in world history. Now, this duality is woven into the declaration that Robert Schuman published on the 9th of May, 1950, on this day, 72 years ago. And in that declaration it said, and I quote, "World peace cannot be safeguarded without the making of creative efforts proportionate to the dangers which threaten it." Schuman was convinced that concrete, visible and tangible achievements could over time create a sense of solidarity. Culture is the software of building a better Europe. Europe Day 2020 is a day to appreciate what we can achieve if we work together creatively, with focus and urgency. Europe Day should inspire us to be as imaginative as the founding fathers of the European Union were. And may we take inspiration from the late Polish leader Lech Walesa, who said, and I quote, "The sole and basic source of our strength is the solidarity of people who seek to live in dignity, truth, and in harmony with their conscience." The question is, are we all individually and collectively up to this challenge? We'd better be. Thank you.
And I think it was said here with different, slightly more hopeful vocabulary or dictionary, but I think we need to take this notion of disillusionment as a possibility, a small opening, small interstice for us, before us, to move forward, but then without illusions. Mm-hmm. We need to land back into reality and ask that intense question, now what?
The United Europeans are observing the unbearable in Ukraine, hiding behind the European wall, because the Berlin Wall didn't fall. It just gained another form, as we know. So here is the question. It's not even about only Ukraine, but how these observing of the unbearable affect your society. What does it do to the condition of the Western democracy?
kind of pre-enacting another world. I think this is the only way, and it sounds very dreamy, and I don't mean it like that, but I think we need to operate these two possibilities at the same time, resistance and re-existence. What cannot be imagined cannot be built, and I think this is what we need to take very seriously in our field.
This idea of transgression is very important for the European culture. And I mean, we have transgression from paganism to Christianity to Enlightenment. We have this transgression of, in literature, the invention of irony, for instance. But we have also the bad aspects of transgression, the transgression of nature with industry. This is a question mark. We have this transgression of other cultures with imperialism. But this very idea of transgression is extremely interesting. I mean, basically everything is there, and at a certain time, I hope that the aides of state and the parliamentarians and we from the civil society will dare to use all this part. I mean, just to speak about this identity, just to create debates, and then to transmit this history through education, which is very important. I think it's crazy that 72 years after the Schuman Declaration, we still don't have a common, European civic education course in Europe. At least 1 hour for every kid in Europe. I mean, just the basics of European history. This is crazy.
Exactly. That's also why we're here today, to talk and question and think together what we can do for the future and for Europe.